With the decade coming to an end, today I'm going to share with you guys what I think are the 10 best action films of the decade. So let's get started. Hey everybody, my name is Justin. I love to watch movies. If you guys love to watch movies too, you guys are in the right spot. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and click that bell notification for more up and coming videos. Today I'm going to share with you guys my 10 best action films of the decade. I previously did a video on the 10 best comic book films. I did one for romance films, animated films, horror films. Now I'm going to do action, and next week I'll be doing comedy, and then at the end of the month I'll be doing the overall best films of the decade. Side note for this video, I'm going to include some movies that are in a series into one spot. So for example, I'm just going to spoil it quick. I'm going to include the Mission Impossible movies from this decade into one spot for this list. If I didn't, Mission Impossible and some other movies within a certain series would take up like the whole entire list. So let's get this video started. Coming in at number 10 is Fast 5. I'm a huge fan of the Fast and Furious franchise, and Fast 5 is easily the best one out of all of the ones that have ever been made. What I want out of an action film is to be entertained. I want to see a lot of thrilling sequences, and Fast 5 gives me that, but ups it a lot with some crazy action scenes that make no sense whatsoever, and it's filled with a really good cast. Everybody gets along. There's a lot of great relationships within the movie. I have a soft spot for the Fast and Furious franchise, and it gets a bit bizarre and out there with the most recent films like Hobbs and Shaw and The Fate of the Furious, but I think Fast 5 is my favorite out of them all, and I love the action. I love the end where they have their cars hooked up to that big safe and they're driving it through the streets and it's just destroying buildings. It's a lot of fun. Coming at number 9 is Edge of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow took a very common idea, kind of like that Groundhog Day style of a movie where the day is being repeated over and over again, but adds so much action into it. It makes the very typical idea for a movie very unique and something worth watching. Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt are great in their roles. And what I appreciate about this movie is that even though it's the same day over and over again, the action doesn't stay the same over and over again. It always manages to add something new to it, which keeps this movie fresh when it easily could have been a very repetitive film. But it is one of the action gems of the decade. It is one that I've always loved watching, and when it came out, it didn't do that well in theaters, but I heard they're making a sequel, and I would love to see what they do with that movie. Coming in at number 8 is Baby Driver. I love Edgar Wright as a director, and having Ansel Elgort in this movie as Baby, this movie is so cool to watch. He is great behind the wheel. The soundtrack is excellent in this movie. Edgar Wright is just a fantastic director in general, but his action film Baby Driver is easily one of his best films. It has a great supporting cast with Jamie Foxx in the movie, and a lot of the action scenes in here are thrilling when Ansel Elgort is doing what he does best. They're all filmed very nicely. It's like shots of the car driving throughout the city. It's so impressive to watch. And pair that with the really upbeat story, the soundtrack, it all comes together to make a really eccentric action film. Coming at number 7 is Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer is from the same director of this year's excellent film Parasite, and I absolutely love Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer has a lot to say about society in general, how everybody lives on this train, and the people at the front of the train are the high class people, the people who are rich, and at the back of the train are the lower class people who struggle to survive. And as they're making their way to the front of the train, it is met with some brutal, well-filmed action sequences. Coming at number 6 is Dunkirk. Dunkirk is one of Christopher Nolan's best films. It is a well-shot movie. It is beautiful to look at. The cinematography is outstanding. And the way that it's filmed, you can absolutely feel that intense action scenes throughout this movie. It's a war film and it's brutal. The action scenes have such long takes to add to that intensity of the movie. The score is cinematic, and at times it can be really loud, it can be really quiet, and accompanies whatever scene it is with very well. Dunkirk is a film that you can just get lost in the action and just watch it and forget about what is going on because the action is filmed so well and you're just invested in whatever you are watching. Christopher Nolan is such a great director, and I can't wait to see his movie Tenet coming out next year, but Dunkirk is just so good. Coming at number 5 is Skyfall. This will be the only James Bond movie you will see on this list. I thought Spectre was pretty good, but Skyfall was much better. There's so many cool action scenes within this movie, and it's a story that I actually found very interesting. Javier Bardem is great in his role as the villain, and Daniel Craig is once again good as 007. This film opens up with a pretty good action sequence on a train, and throughout the movie, we get a really interesting James Bond story with some pretty good action as well, and a cast that really supports Daniel Craig and just adds a lot to the overall story of this movie. Even though Daniel Craig is a little bit older compared to when he was with Quantum of Solace and Casino Royale, I still think that he handles his action scenes very well. They're very believable and still add a lot of intense moments. I'm really looking forward to No Time to Die. I've seen the trailer and I think a lot of those action scenes within that movie look really great. And we'll see in about 10 years if No Time to Die lands on that list of best action movies of the next decade. Coming at number 4 is the Mission Impossible movies of this decade. This is including Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout. All 3 are just great films. And I don't understand how this series is getting better and better. After watching Ghost Protocol and watching Rogue Nation, I'm thinking, how are they going to top this movie? Because it's really good. It's really intense. The story is just so interesting, and Tom Cruise is just great at everything he does. And then we get Fallout, and Fallout is easily the best Mission Impossible movie there is. And all the scenes are just so crazy, and how Tom Cruise does all of his stunts it's outstanding to me, and I absolutely love the guy, and you absolutely feel that within the movie. Nothing feels fake at all within these 3 Mission Impossible movies. Everything just feels so real, and that's what I loved about these movies. How they're filmed, how the story is, and Tom Cruise is so good at what he does. Coming in at number 3 is the 3 John Wick movies. John Wick Chapter 2 and John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. And the first John Wick movies are just so good. I mean, the third one is just the best out of them all. But Keanu Reeves is much like Tom Cruise. The moments with Keanu Reeves fighting just feel so real. And they're shot so well. They don't allow for a lot of edits to make it feel fake and you're trying to sell something. You're watching Keanu Reeves fight someone right in front of you, and it's so epic. The third movie where he's throwing the knives towards the beginning of the movie and riding the horse, it's just so intense, and there's so much action within the third film. The first and second one are really great and have a lot of action with it, but I'm going to talk a little more about Parabellum, the third film, because that's the most recent one and my favorite one as well. There's just so much good action with the movie. Kind of like I talked about with Dunkirk, you're just watching it and you're getting lost within this movie. You could completely forget about the previous scene and the story. You're just so invested in that one action scene, and you're leaning closer and closer, and you're on your edge of your seat, and you're just watching it, and your eyes are wide open. You're not blinking. You're just so involved in the action, and it's crazy good. Coming in at number 2 is the 2 Raid films. Are some of the best action films, not only of this decade, but of all time. The Raid films, oh my god. Much like John Wick, there's not a lot of edits, and you're just watching people fight. The scene in Raid 2 where they just kind of get prepared, and they're looking at each other, and they start fighting. It's something to marvel over. I absolutely love the first 2 movies. The action scenes just feel so intense. A lot of them are really quick and fastly paced, but with no cuts to make it seem fake. And they're so brutal at times, and Raid 2 does a lot more with its story compared to the first Raid film, so you get a little more of a narrative within that movie, which I still really enjoy. But these 2 movies have some of the best fighting sequences out of any movie on this list. These are the best fighting movies I've seen of the decade. But the number one best action film of this decade goes to Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road, the first time I saw it, I was completely blown away. It was my favorite film of 2015, one of my favorite films of all time. Mad Max Fury Road is just a beautiful looking film. There's so many unique action sequences within this movie, and them on this long stretch of like just dirt and all of the outlandish characters and cars chasing Mad Max is just, it's so crazy. And they can add a lot of intense moments. And Immortan Joe is so crazy within this movie, and there's not a lot of that fighting scenes within the movie. That's why I said The Raids are my favorite like fighting movies of the decade. But Mad Max has some really intense action scenes that involve some cars and some trucks and some big vehicles. Everybody's just ramming each other, and they have a lot of intense movies with people like slamming on the drums, and then you got that big storm scene. It's just so crazy good. Mad Max Fury Road is a movie that has so much effort going into it, and it pays off. It's beautiful to look at. It is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I can't wait to talk about it when it comes time for the best list of the year. But Mad Max Fury Road, I saw it, I think 4 times in theaters, and I was so floored with every moment. I was enthralled with what I was watching. It is so crazy good. I can't wait to see if they ever do another one. There's been talks about it just recently, actually. But Mad Max Fury Road, oh my gosh. I could sit here and talk all day about Immortan Joe and how he's so cool, and Max, how he doesn't really talk much, but the action scenes are just so fun to watch. So there you guys have it. These are what I think are the best action films of the decade. I didn't want to include a bunch of superhero films. I wanted movies that were mainly action films. Yeah, Captain America Civil War has a bunch of action scenes, but I think that is a comic book movie. That's why I didn't include any of the comic book movies in this list. I wanted to stick strictly to action films, not comic book movies. Superhero films, if you know what I'm talking about. Make sure to leave your list of the best action films down below, and stay tuned. I got one for comedies coming up next week, and then I'll have one for the best overall movies of the decade. My name is Just Watch Movies, and you guys stay classy, too.